Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics, your bite-sized guide to the corridors of power. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Yuan. Welcome to the programme. Now, Caroline, we spent the last week talking about the new government, all the announcements and the appointments, but there's another party getting to grips with a new role in British politics. In his resignation speech, Rishi Sunak described the election as a difficult day after a number of difficult days. Well, I think there's probably going to be a few more tricky days ahead for the Conservative Party as they enter a period of soul-searching following their general election drubbing.
I think soul-searching is far too generous for what, and perhaps benign for what seems to be happening now. Having said that, I did re-watch Rishi Sunak's resignation speech delivered outside Number 10. Actually, I think it was one of the best speeches he's made. I mean, that's not facetious. I mean that honestly. It was actually quite heartfelt.
Yeah, lots of people on social media saying that it sort of revealed a new side to the former PM. But this happened before, hasn't it? Of course, once the pressure of kind of office comes away, then people kind of can relax a little bit. Though, of course, he's still got an important job to do as leader of the opposition. He does say he'll stay on as party leader as long as the Conservatives want him to, but he does intend to stand down eventually. So at some point, we're heading for a leadership race, a mere 2 years after the last one. In fact, it's sooner if you count the replacement of Liz Truss. There's already a fair bit of posturing going on. Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman have been trading blows in public this week. The party's debating whether to keep the leadership contest short and sweet. Some others, though, think that an extended period of self-reflection could be useful for the Conservatives. But I think whichever way they go, there's going to be a key question, which is, can the Conservatives avoid a messy and very public civil war?
Yeah, look, the battle for the future of the Tories was going on, long before the election was even called, really. We've seen the struggles between the further right, the more centrist wings of the party over things like immigration. Suella Braverman and Rishi Sunak over the Rwanda deportation scheme, for example. Of course, that policy is now long gone, swiftly gone. Many in the party were eyeing the leadership contest the whole time, it would seem. And you've got the looming threat now to layer over that of reform. They amassed 4 million votes on polling day, largely thanks to grabbing votes from Conservative supporters. So, how to deal with them going forward is going to be huge.
Yeah, something the party lost votes because their policies weren't right-wing enough. That's the Braverman, Rees, Mogg faction, while others desperately think the party needs to tack back to the centre if they're to stand any chance of escaping opposition. So a lot to think about for the Conservatives. Well, joining us now is someone with a fair bit of experience mediating Conservative Party family feuds. Brandon Lewis is the former Conservative Party chairman who presided over the 2019 Tory leadership election and also formerly MP for Great Yarmouth and holder of a string of ministerial posts. Welcome to Bloomberg UK Politics. Brandon, I wanted to ask you if the party has really absorbed the scale of the loss. Kemi Badenoch said this week that some of her shadow cabinet colleagues don't understand the enormity of their election defeat.
I think there's a real possibility of that. And I've gone through, as you say, not only the 2019 leadership election, but actually I go back as far as IDS's when he won the leadership. I've done pretty much every one since then. When you see a big loss like the party saw last week, and it was a devastating loss last Thursday into Friday morning, obviously, I think it will take a bit of time because a huge number of the members of Parliament who were standing for election last week, whether they were won or lost, were not members of Parliament where the Conservative Party was last in opposition. So I think the reality of what opposition means, particularly with so few members, just 121, I think will take a bit of time to really sink in and be fully understood in terms of what you can and can't achieve and do.
Who or what do you think is being blamed for the loss? How much of it is being blamed on Rishi Sunak, on the timing of the election? How are people thinking about it now?
Well, I think there's a number of layers to what colleagues are looking at. Look, I'm not in Parliament anymore. Parliament has its own ecosystem and its own sort of heartbeat, if you like. And the parliamentary party there will be looking at these things, both from the point of view, as you rightly said in the introduction, about the challenge from reform that not just won those 5 seats, but also the impact they had in a whole number of other seats where we didn't win, arguably because of the impact of the reform vote, but also balancing out the fact that the Liberal Democrats won around 63 seats from the Conservatives, and they're obviously from a very different ideological point of view. There is certainly a lot of anger with Rishi Sunak over calling the election, the style of the election, what happened through the election. And to be fair to Rishi, as the type of guy he is, he's taken responsibility for that, which I expected nothing less. He's a very genuine guy who would have taken that very, very strongly and personally himself. And I think has done the right thing, taking that responsibility. But so the two sides of that coin are being looked at. I think colleagues will be looking at the wider party around what it means for us in terms of where the party needs to go and what it needs to do to regain some of that ground, but also what went wrong during the election in an operational sense as well.
In terms of the rules, there are some arguing, Lord Young in House Magazine this week, that members should not be involved in the process. Party members just tend to look for candidates who reflect their views, whereas MPs are more focused on winning elections and retaining their seats. Do you agree with that view?
No, I don't. I put a piece in earlier this week myself. We are a membership-based organisation. The Conservative Party is a party of its members, and therefore we have to reflect that. Many members will argue the only direct involvement they have is when they vote on a leader. I do think there is a change of the rules that when I was chairman and we had confidence votes with Theresa May, I thought, and I think even more strongly after what we saw happen to Boris Johnson, which is when you are in government and you have a leader that has got a mandate from the party members and even more got a mandate from the general public, as Boris did in 2019's general election, I do think we need to look again at whether a handful, relatively speaking, of members of parliament can create a confidence vote. Having 50 MPs, roughly it was, around Boris being able to have a confidence vote in somebody who had a mandate from 14 million people in the public in a general election, I think we need to, as a party, look again and say, if somebody's got a mandate from our members and from the public in a general election, then they should be able to see that mandate through. In opposition, it's slightly different. But I think ultimately, when we are choosing the leader, for whatever reason, whether they've stood down or whatever the reason, then we are a membership-based party. And I think the members need to have their say. Ultimately, I think the process where MPs channel it down to that final two is right. And what we saw in 2016, actually, was that the final two was such a clear-cut majority for Theresa May that Andrea Leadsom chose not to stand. And that's understandable as well. But I think if there are two that have got a level playing field, then it's right that the members have their say, because they are the people who fund the party, go out and campaign for the party. And ultimately, we will be asking them to put their time and effort in for that leader. So we need to know they support that leader.
But you're alive to the danger of party members picking really unsuitable, Liz Truss and Jeremy Corbyn being two recent examples.
Well, obviously, Liz Truss was never tested in an election, but that her as leader obviously didn't work out. But that was because parliamentarians ultimately turned on Liz Truss as leader, and she took the decision to stand down. And she took that decision ultimately to stand down. As I say, when you are choosing a leader and you are a membership-based organisation, if we don't allow our members, who are from a broad spectrum of ideologies, and one of the things I've seen through leadership elections, 2019 being a very good example of that, and in 2022 to an extent, if you look at the media coverage, because we were the first ones in 2019 to let the media in, you can see our members come from very wide backgrounds, both of age, of demographics, and the type of questions and the challenges they put to our candidates were really, really good and really strong. They took that responsibility very seriously. And ultimately, as I say, many of our members will say that the one thing they get for their vote is a chance to have a say from time to time, hopefully not as often as we've done recently, in who the leader will be. And I think it's right that we respect that. It also gives that space for a wider debate across the party in terms of what we're looking at, the candidates setting out their positions.
Okay, who are the main contenders for leader then now, post Rishi Sunak? It already looks like quite a brawl, to be blunt, with Bean Badenoch and Braverman, but there are other contenders, Priti Patel, James Cleverly, Tom Tugendhat. Who do you think are the main contenders?
Well, we're seeing a number of names, as you rightly outlined, being put around at the moment. In terms of the first stages, I actually think it's a good thing that we've got a range of colleagues who are potentially being talked about and having themselves put forward, because that's what widens the debate. One of the good things in that 2019 campaign, we all remember the Boris Johnson versus Jeremy Hunt final two, but there was about 10 or 11 people at one point. And that's healthy, actually, for the party, within the parliamentary party and within our membership, actually, because they get to see this as people are writing their op-eds and making their cases in various outlets. The different sort of thoughts and processes around how we go forward. And this is going to be a really important decision. After the election result we've had and having that long in government, now we're going into opposition. The approach that the next leader takes is going to be really, really important in how the party comes back together. My main advice to the party, for what it's worth, as an ex-MP, is nothing quite as formal as a former MP, but somebody who's been an association officer, a councillor, a party member for years, activist and party chairman. Yes, I would say the key thing is we need to take that time to find a leader we can unify around, because it's a unity issue that I think was the lack of unity, the most damaging thing for us as a party over the last 4 or 5 years, actually.
Yeah.
And we need to get that discipline back.
But I think that's the odd question, isn't it? Because the voter perspective, and I think the economist perspective, which is the one that we often reflect, is actually not about unity, it's about delivery. It's the fact that the party didn't deliver on the economics, did not improve people's financial lives. In fact, real disposable income fell. People were worse off. Fundamentally, the party lost the economic argument.
And we ended up in a situation coming out of COVID that we never got round to rectifying, of having a bigger and bigger government, state and higher tax regime, and people were frustrated with that. I think Rishi was trying to make the case running into and through the general election that we were now on a pathway where we could start to reduce taxes. The problem is, and this is why I think the unity point is so important, if you've got a strong case to make, whether it's on tax, whether it's on regulation, whether it's on healthcare, education, any of these issues, to really be able to have the space to make that contribution, the public have got to see that you're credible. That's partly based on previous delivery, I agree, but it's also based on what is the airspace, and what if the party is continually at loggerheads with itself and with each other, and you've got different cabinet members, government members, backbenchers, parliamentarians of all descriptions going out across the media criticising different parts of government, then you don't create the space to be able to make a positive case for any of those things, whether it is the cost of living issues, health, education, or defence. And that's why I think that party unity point is so important. I think one of the things, as we look at the Labour campaign over the last couple of years, one of the things Keir Starmer has to have a lot of credit for is he brought discipline back into the Labour Party so that people were focused on policies and ideas rather than divisions within their party. On our side, we've been so busy arguing with ourselves and each other over the last few years through various leadership campaigns, etc., that we haven't had that space to be able to make a legitimate, positive case for any of the particular issues that I think matter to people.
How does the party wrestle back those 4 million Reform voters?
Well, we've got to be very humble around the reality that we have no God-given right to be the party of the centre-right. You know, we've got to make that case. We've got to show people that we've got answers to their questions and that we understand what the issues are, whether it is people who want to see the government and their party have an understanding of why they see immigration as an issue, or why it is they want to see a party presenting ideas that can mean that they have more money in their pockets through cost of living, whether it's taxation or economic growth and job opportunities, delivering for younger people. I feel very strongly we need to do more on delivering housing, all these range of issues. We've got to be able to give a very clear an offer. We as a party have always been a pretty wide tent, pretty big tent, you know, that coalition that David Cameron brought together, which has meant that we were able to gain seats from Liberal Democrats as well as holding that red wall area in 2019 as it's become known. So the party, I think, has got to take a bit of time at the moment to have a look at what that election means, as I say, both across the seats we lost to Liberal Democrats and where we lost seats either directly to, like we did in Great Yarmouth, or because of the growth in the vote for reform.
So a lot of thinking needs to be done then. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being
Absolutely.
with us. Lovely to speak to you. Brandon Lewis is the former Conservative Party chairman joining us here. Well, look, that's it from us for today. Thank you so much for listening in. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so that other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you listen.
This episode was produced by Tiwa Adebayo and our audio engineer was Sean Grostamakia. I'm Yuan Potts.
And I'm Caroline Hepker, and we'll be back with more on Monday, hopefully with an England football win to report. Wouldn't that be something? That's it. This is Bloomberg.